This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for listening, guys. We've got a lot to discuss as the transfer portal window is coming to a close for both basketball and football, but we are going to focus on football today. Their portal window closes as of this time of recording, so we'll focus on that as the Mustangs did pick up a commitment. But first, we've got to remind you guys about our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team. Let them walk you through why this might be the right option for you when it comes to your travel, whether it's a family trip wherever you want to go, or a business trip and getting there from point A to point B with a level of luxury that leaves you refreshed and ready to go for a big meeting, or if it's for an SMU game day. Why fly standard when you can ascend to an extraordinary level of travel? StatusJet transforms your travel into an event of its own, making every trip a win. And look, it's all about the party if you're SMU. We know that you're looking to pick up a win on the road, but why don't you start off your trip the right way by winning with StatusJet? Use code PONYUPACC for a discount on a round-trip flight, or mention On the Pony Express, and they will apply that discount to a round-trip flight. So reach out to David Henry and his team. They are proud supporters of SMU Athletics as well as the On the Pony Express podcast. Well, Sunday brought big news as the Mustangs added yet another transfer from the University of Miami, as the Mustangs picked up Jared Harrison-Hunte, big man on the defensive line for the Mustangs. This was a massive pickup because the Mustangs needed to find another defensive tackle to address that room, and they did that with a familiar face for a lot of this staff. A former top 100 defensive lineman in the country. He is going into his final season of eligibility. He's in that 6'4", 295-pound range, so he'll play the 3 tech for SMU, and he was a starter for the Hurricanes as well. Started 11 games in the 2023 season, had 26 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. He's played a lot of football for the Hurricanes, starting over 20 games, playing in 42 games overall, 78 tackles, 20.5 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks in his career as a Hurricane. And I'll say this, the party was on Twitter when the news broke from Jared Harrison-Hunte. He visited over the weekend to check out SMU and gave his commitment on Sunday. Saw a lot of SMU defensive linemen like Tank Booker, Elijah Roberts' family. Shout out them always being active on Twitter for SMU. They were all pumped, celebrating the recruiting win for Calvin Thibodeau, who is sitting pretty when it comes to his defensive line for the 2024 season. With the addition of Jared Harrison-Hunte, SMU now has 4 defensive linemen going into the final season, or I guess 5, defensive linemen going into the final season of eligibility. So there will be another big group that probably comes in through the transfer portal next year. They're hoping to obviously reel in some high school signees as well. But now you have a 3 tech who probably factors in as a starter. And you have him, you have Mike Lockhart, the West Virginia transfer. Those are your 2 probably 3 tech type of players. And then you have Tank Booker as a nose tackle. You have some options like a Mike Lockhart at nose. You have Blake Burris coming in this summer. You have Jonathan Jefferson. You have Corey Roberson. You have options along the interior of the defensive line, without a doubt. Kevin Allen was pushing for time. Mike Johan Sanjo-Njiki had a nice spring. You could argue that across the defensive line now, all 4 spots, SMU has a 3 deep that you've got to feel really good about going into the ACC with, and that's important. SMU showed last year how important it is to have defensive linemen. We talked to you guys about it throughout the transfer portal window that SMU was going to be looking for another defensive tackle. They found that in Jared Harrison-Hunte. And look, if you're an SMU fan and you aren't exposed or too familiar with Florida State Miami Twitter, it went hard on Sunday as that news broke. The Noles were among the finalists for Jared Harrison-Hunte, and SMU came in and just snatched him. And it was a big recruiting win for Rhett Lashley and his entire staff to get Jared Harrison-Hunte away from the Seminoles. So as much good as Florida State has done in the transfer portal, SMU picked up a guy that is rated as a 4-star transfer. If you're into looking at transfer portal rankings, I'm not as fond of them as some people are, but this was a huge win, not only because of the need, because defensive tackles and good ones are a need for SMU. You can never have too many of them. So they address a need, but also you get a recruiting win over the Seminoles as you're going into the ACC, and you snatch obviously a guy who's going to be counted on for plenty of snaps for Miami this fall as well. So a really, really nice end of the weekend for Rhett Lashley to get him on board. But now you can start a group of Jared Harrison-Hunte, Tank Booker, Elijah Roberts, Jafari Harvey, and that's just kind of on paper. Those are your veterans. Those are your all in the final year of eligibility. But it wouldn't shock me if Isaiah Smith started at the bandit position. You also have Cam Robertson, who's at that position. But Isaiah Smith is a big piece over the next 2 years for SMU, and he's playing that bandit spot. You have Elijah Roberts. You have Omari Abor. You have so many options at that opposite side. Jalen Samuels is looking like he's not going to enter the portal, at least as of this recording. So they have depth there on opposite of the bandit position at that strong side defensive end spot. And then Tank Booker and some kind of combination of the rest of these defensive linemen that we've talked a lot about being that nose tackle spot for SMU is really a nice position to be in if you're the Mustangs. So this is big, big news for SMU without a doubt, as they were able to go ahead and address this position in a big way. So overall, SMU sitting pretty on the defensive line for the 2024 season. The Mustangs really wrote that blueprint for what Rhett Lashley and this staff really want to see on the defensive line year in, year out. And they did it last year. And look, Rhett has been a part of the Auburn National Championship team. That's a team that routinely has had some of the nation's top defensive linemen, particularly the interior guys. I know that Derek Brown, that was a little more in the recent time, but Auburn's always played good defense. And that national championship team, while Rhett Lashley was on staff there, and they had Cam Newton and they've had Nick Marshall, and they've had some high flying type of athletes on the offensive side, that defense for Auburn has always been able to keep them in games over the course of kind of that Gene Chizik, Gus Malzahn type of time that Rhett Lashley has spent some time with. And so I do think once they saw that blueprint come together last season, they wanted to double down on it. And they did that with this portal edition with Jared Harrison-Hunte. That allows you to have a true starting ACC 3 technique on the field. You have Tank Booker, you have Mike Lockhart, you have Jonathan Jefferson, you have Corey Roberson, you have all these guys that can really play along the interior, and you can go at least 3 deep, just looking at it on paper. And so Scott Simons licking his chops in terms of being able to work with Calvin Thibodeau on moving those guys around, finding different ways to get them in good situations. I mean, you think about what SMU has been able to do with some of these talented defensive linemen, moving them around into different pass rush scenarios. Elijah Roberts played a little bit along the interior at times in third downs and things like that, allowing Isaiah Smith and Cam Robertson and Jalen Samuels to be on the field. And SMU, brings in a guy like Jafari Harvey, who, if he can stay healthy, is going to be sitting in a really good position to contribute as well. And that gives you so much depth to play with. And look, if SMU is going to be successful in the ACC in year one, it's going to be on the backs of this defensive line and this front 7 overall. You've got so much talent coming back at the linebacker position that is experienced. On the defensive line, you have flat out talent and experience that is proven now across the board with the number of starts all these guys have had at the Power 5 level. You factor in maybe getting some, improvement over the course of the summer, and this just bodes really well for SMU overall. So what a accomplishment to get him very quietly on campus last weekend, seal the deal, beat out Florida State, a team that really needed him, and get involved indirectly in a little FSU Miami Twitter war. That was pretty comical reading some of the Twitter highlights from that as my Sunday wound down, because I tell you guys, those Noles and Hurricanes, they hate each other and they will go to war on Twitter. And so SMU was providing some Hurricane fans with plenty of ammunition on Sunday with that. There's some pretty good content if you guys want to go check it out. Check out the quote tweets on the Jared Harrison-Hunte commitment post that I put out on Twitter. So big news for SMU there in the transfer portal to get Jared Harrison-Hunte. Quick reminder before we share what's next. Got to remind you guys about our friends at Status Jet. Status Jet, they can get you from point A to point B with a level of luxury that you would expect from a private jet charter company. Big plane, small plane, helicopter. They can start planning your trip, whether it's business, family, pleasure, whatever. They can plan your trip start to finish, and they can get you in the right situation that you feel comfortable with and you feel like you're getting the best bang for your buck. And of course, you're going to get that level of luxury that you'd expect with a private jet charter company. And you can call them at 866-845-1914 to get more information. You can use code PonyUpACC or tell them you heard about Status Jet from ontheponyexpress.com, and they'll give you a discount on a round trip flight. So reach out to Status Jet today. SMU is now in the final hours, as I'm recording this podcast, of awaiting the transfer portal to close. Players have to email compliance by 11:59 p.m. Central Time to announce, hey, I want to go into the portal, put me into the portal. And if they get it in by 11:59 p.m., then they can do that. Compliance then has 48 hours to submit paperwork. So you could see guys filter in over the coming days. But what I'm told as of the recording of this podcast, SMU is not expecting any surprises to enter the portal at this point. The not so surprising one in a way is that on Sunday, on Monday, I should say, SMU defensive back Teddy Knox, who was involved in the Rashee Rice hit and run case, who was also charged with multiple charges on that case. Very unfortunate for Teddy, but he has entered the transfer portal and will look for a new home. Look, this is the really, you can be sad about this because it's a young man's life that has been ruined by a decision. And you can also at the same time say, well, it did happen and he needs to be held accountable. For Teddy, in terms of entering the transfer portal, he's going to find a new home at some point. And he's going to have a chance to maybe save his life if he doesn't end up spending time in prison in all likelihood, or spending time in prison, period. In all likelihood, he'll be able to get his life back on track and be able to play somewhere for somebody in the college ranks. And whether that's going to JUCO for a year and then bouncing back, that could be on the table for him if he gets through all of these things that he's got ahead of him in the courtroom. And, it just sucks. I've known Teddy for years, and he made a bad decision. But there have also been moments over the course of his time at SMU that he hasn't been a perfect teammate at times. And, he was suspended with and was away from the team there for a little bit last spring while he focused on academics. And so the hard part about all of this from my angle is he was trending well on the football field. And I thought he was poised for, for him, what would have been a really special year, getting to play some corner on top of being SMU's honestly best special teams player. And so he enters the portal and it's all gone because of a decision he made. And so I wish him the best, and hopefully he gets his life back in order. But a really, kind of sad ending. Some of these guys that whether it be recruiting or just getting to know them once they arrive at SMU, and you build a relationship with them. And Teddy's a guy I've known for many years now, and so it's unfortunate. And he comes from a rough background, and that you hope that some of these guys can at least get away from that. And when you get into the system, that's where I worry for Teddy long term. So hopefully he will be held accountable for, to what degree or what level he needs to be. And the legal system will determine that. And hopefully one day he can have a shot to get back on the field if he, handles whatever it is in front of him. So that was a transfer portal entrant from SMU over Monday night, I guess it was, late Monday night. And it isn't too surprising based on his situation, but he was kind of suspended. So there was maybe a thought that, okay, he would, be on the team and all of that. But long story short, new scholarship has opened for SMU. By my count, sitting at 80 scholarships as of this recording. Couple transfer portal targets SMU is after. If you haven't subscribed to ontheponyexpress.com for just $1 for 2 months using code SMU1, that's SMU the number 1. Go to ontheponyexpress.com. We have the latest on the transfer portal targets because the transfer portal window is closing for players to enter. Players can still be recruited, and in all likelihood, I think over the next week to 10 days, you see most of the transfer portal players that have a place to go make a decision, start the process of going to their next home, getting that finalized. I just think that's when you're going to see the large portion of this crop of spring portal players finalize their decisions. We saw Marcus Bryant end up at Missouri and Branson Hickman end up at Oklahoma. Best of luck to them. They both wanted big stages for their final years of college football. And look, the SEC, I mean, it's tough to argue with that. So best of luck to both of them. They'll have big opportunities to play a lot at both of those programs. And they've got 1 year to really put it all together for NFL scouts. And they'll do it on a big stage in the SEC. So best of luck to them. With that said, SMU, we saw Jared Harrison-Hunte make his decision. We saw Kayshawn Sapp make his decision and transfer from East Carolina to SMU. And Matthew Hibner earlier this spring from Michigan to SMU. Now you have SMU honing in on a few key targets. And they've had multiple guys visit over the past week or so. And we've seen SMU get very close to some of these decisions. I think the smart thing for SMU is that these guys wait another 12 hours or so at least before announcing their decisions, because you don't want to give an opportunity for a school to say, hey, look, they're bringing in so-and-so, why don't we get you out of there and make a move? You're clearly, being, recruited over. That's silly. We think you're great. And, these young men are sometimes impressionable. But it looks like SMU isn't going to have to deal with any of that. And I think we'll see more transfer portal commitments start to flow in for SMU, which will give us more things to talk about. But as far as position of need, SMU needs to continue to address the offensive line. That is a big piece, especially the tackle position. They need to bring in somebody who can really push the likes of Savion Byrd and PJ Williams, because that's when SMU was really solid on the offensive line, is when they had that option, for left and right tackle to be able to grab somebody off the bench in a sense and say, hey, give us some snaps here. And the offensive line for SMU is in really good shape overall. I mean, Garen Justice has been able to put together a group that has some versatility. We saw Justin Osborne play center this spring. We know Ja'Kai Clark has played center and guard. And you also have Savion Byrd, who came in after playing guard at Oklahoma and kick out to right tackle. PJ Williams played right and left tackle There are options for SMU, but they need to address the position because they need more quality depth, particularly at the tackle spot. And I think we'll see them do that in the transfer portal if they can find somebody that they really feel like can help that spot. And the thing about it is it's hard right now to find players that, look, SMU has a good offensive line. They need more talent in there to raise it to the level that it truly needs to be for the ACC. And to do that takes money. Well, some of these guys are going to command plenty of money. We talked about Marcus Bryant and Branson Hickman. They didn't go there for free to either of those spots and got quite the bag on the NIL front. So good on them. Good for them. SMU will have to do that as well to find a truly starting caliber tackle in the transfer portal. So it's all walking a fine line in that respect when it comes to addressing your offensive line. And also, if you get through the transfer portal window, obviously that'll save you from other guys, maybe leaving. But if they did graduate and they get ticked off, they could leave as well. So it's all a line to walk as SMU goes through this, but they are looking to address the offensive tackle position in a big way. That would be one of the top needs. Another need is at cornerback, and a name that makes a lot of sense here. And there's really two of them, but we'll highlight one of them for now. And that's Terrence Brooks, former 5-star defensive back who left the University of Texas. His father, Chet, played for the 49ers for 3 seasons before suffering a career-ending injury. He was a starter on their Super Bowl team that won it all. And Terrence Brooks, went to Texas as a highly regarded player, and obviously an on-3 5-star, but hasn't worked out as well as he would have liked. So after a couple of seasons with the Longhorns, he is on the move. He's got 3 years to play, 2 seasons remaining. He's a big corner. He finished up his high school career at Plano John Paul, which is right down the street from the Embody household. He played in 9 games as a true freshman before playing in 2023 and earning honorable mention All Big 12 honors, playing in 14 games, making 13 starts. He had 20 tackles, 6 PBUs, 3 picks this season as the Longhorns went to the college football playoff. He makes a lot of sense. SMU needs a cornerback who can come in and start right away. He's a good one. He's somebody that Texas is not relying on for sure to be a starter this season as they go into the SEC. They brought in some more talent in Austin, and Terrence Brooks has some things he needs to continue to improve on, which is potentially good news for SMU. Maybe the competition, if they do decide to press, is might not be as deep as it is for some of these other corners that have entered. But he is a very talented cornerback that did enter the portal earlier this week. And look, for me, I think he makes a ton of sense. You get a Dallas kid back into the fold. He's talented. Ricky Hunley is a really, really, really good cornerbacks coach. And for the most part, he gets a lot out of his guys. I mean, you look at what he was getting out of Teddy Knox before things went south there. You look at the cornerback room and you see A.J. Davis take a step forward this spring. You see Charles Woods and Chris Megginson come to SMU last year, and they both played pretty well overall. And then you get Jalen Davis Robinson. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be a good one for SMU. They need those guys to keep taking steps. What they also need is guys who are talented enough to really make things work at that cornerback spot, because you have Deuce Harmon, who's shown you flashes, but you still need to address that position, because across this defense, you've got veterans at safeties, you've got a deep room there, you've got a defensive line that we've talked a lot about, should be, quite honestly, one of the better ones in the ACC, at least on paper. You've got a ton of experience coming back at linebacker with maybe a true breakout star in Alex Kilgore. Our friends at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, one of the guys picked Alex Kilgore to break out this year. But you have this cornerback room that needs a starter. It needs somebody to come in and grab a hold of one of the positions and take it with a stranglehold and be that reliable lockdown corner. So if you're SMU, the line to walk is, and there's been some corners that have entered late that have been appealing, and they're kicking the tires on a lot of them. Trust me. And we'll have more on that on the site. But you really need someone to come in my opinion, and you can't risk saying, okay, there's a cornerback or 2 or 3 out there that would make sense. But one thing for SMU's defense that's important is not upsetting the culture that Scott Simons has built. They would like to have a relationship with the player if they can, previous relationship. And then they want somebody who will fit in culture-wise. And so while those things are important, the balance is, all right, if we pass and we ride with this group, is this group good enough to take us to where we want to go defensively? Or is it going to be a liability? Or are guys going to get hurt? Or should we just take one to provide depth? Because if not, and guys get hurt, you're looking to Speedy Nettles and you're looking maybe at moving around some guys and saying, hey, you got to step up at corner for SMU. So it's a very important position to nail, and I don't envy being in Ricky Hunley and Scott Simon's shoes, because it's there's some talented guys in the transfer portal right now that SMU is keeping an eye on. So we will be tracking it as well. But the cornerback position, for me, very, very important position overall for SMU to not only acquire a player that is of the caliber that they need, but also one that, can fit in on and off the field, because that's the only hole I really see on this defense. The rest of it is all about this team taking the next step as they go up a level in competition. And we've seen them bring in talent at certain spots to address that, like the defensive line. But we've also seen them stand fairly pat with the groups that they've had and say, all right, we just need some depth here. We need to add a guy here or there. But we're relying on a lot of these guys to improve in a big way. So, and then with, a few scholarships available, SMU will always kick the tires on a best available player. And I think the edge position is something that also makes sense there. So keep an eye on that. We've dropped some tidbits on the Pony Express about that. Saw a couple of our faithful YouTube comment section folks jumping on the site. So we appreciate you guys who have jumped on board and brought your username from YouTube right onto the On the Pony Express board. Really appreciate you guys for jumping on board. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Look, we are going to do just kind of a look ahead here. We've got a lot that we're going to be sharing. The portal window closes here pretty soon. We're going to be dropping fresh two deep updates on where the depth chart stands for SMU. We're going to talk about some of the other burning questions entering the offseason for SMU. We're going to hand out some spring superlatives. I know spring was kind of a lifetime ago at this point, but I'm just kind of playing catch up with the portal window being as critical as it is. So wanted to get some of that to you guys. So we'll have some content like that. And of course, in May, it is a massive recruiting month for the high school ranks. We look ahead to 2 big recruiting weekends. We'll have you guys covered on those as well. But look, the transfer portal window for SMU is all about finding players that can push them over the top at certain positions. And with Jared Harrison-Hunte, they've done that. With Matthew Hibner, in my opinion, they've done that. They've gotten a very reliable blocking tight end who has national championship experience to bring into that room. With having a NFL draft pick running around there, because I do think RJ Maryland is that, it's tough to convince somebody to come into a room like that. So they nailed that. Kayshawn Sapp, they improved their interior. I think that's a position group that needed just somebody to kind of shore up the interior, and they had a space for it and a guy they're very familiar with. And they have, like I said, a couple more additions on the way that they feel really good about. And So if the transfer portal window was in the spring about checking off certain positions, so far they've checked every single one except corner on defense and offensive tackle. But the good news for SMU is transfer portal window is closed, but now they can do some more recruiting and kind of check some boxes with some targets and things like that, and see where the chips fall on that front. So with that, guys, a quick note on the pod, because tomorrow's pod will be basketball focused as they picked up a commitment. But SMU quarterback commit Keelon Russell was at Ole Miss this weekend for his official visit. Talking with sources around his recruitment and some folks at Ole Miss. Weekend went well. Top 100 prospect committed to SMU, who rolled through Oxford for another visit. He is very familiar with the program. He had the Rebels as a finalist when SMU landed his commitment in September. But I don't get the sense that Ole Miss is the team that SMU needs to be really keeping an eye on here. He did add an offer from Alabama on Sunday. The Crimson Tide came through and evaluated him and were able to extend an offer, or I think he actually picked up the offer earlier in the, I guess, late last week, maybe. It could be wrong, but the Crimson Tide did jump in to the race. He's going to officially visit there at the end of May. He's also got that Florida official visit still lined up. And then, of course, he comes to SMU on May 17th. So this recruitment is kind of entering potentially a final stretch here between SMU and Keelon Russell. And SMU is going to do everything it can to keep him and show him why he's such a priority for SMU's long-term future. SMU, even though they landed Preston Stone a few years ago now, I mean, they haven't landed a guy like Keelon Russell, a guy whose stock is skyrocketing entering the summer before his senior year, a guy who can truly do it all, who has won state championships on the highest level, who has late offers from programs around the country that are among the best at landing top quarterback prospects, I'll add. It's going to be very interesting to see how this one plays out. And if you don't subscribe to the On3 National YouTube channel, do that now. But Josh Newberg had me on. He's our national recruiting video guy. And Josh has been around the business for a long, long time. And we'll have Josh on at some point, because I do want to talk a little bit about FSU, Miami. He's been in the thick of the ACC world and covered the Seminoles for a long time. But he had me on our national channel, and he's had Steve Wiltfong on our national channel and some of these other guys. And the thing about this quarterback position and the dominoes around the country is, what's true today might not be true tomorrow. Like Josh had me on today, and I'll spoil part of the video for you guys. He said, well, do you think he sticks or do you think he flips? And I said, I think he sticks right now. The reason why is, look, we don't, and you can kind of expand on this, but all these quarterback recruiting battles have context and caveats and what ifs and dominoes that need to fall in some cases in order for them to happen. When you have Keelon Russell, and you talk about Keelon Russell and A&M, for example, or you talk about Keelon Russell and Texas, well, they need to lose quarterback commitments to end up with Keelon Russell. I don't think he wants to be a part of a true quarterback class. Texas A&M is not taking a second quarterback. Texas is kicking the tires on it, but doesn't really seem keen on it. Keelon Russell is a guy who's really peaking in terms of confidence right now. He is an awesome kid. He is very complimentary of all these programs that recruit him. But when you look at where this recruitment's at, I'm not as worried about Ole Miss. I know Lane Kiffin, Portal King, all those things, high-flying offense. He's developed quarterbacks. Great. I just don't think he ends up at Ole Miss. He's already picked over them once. I think he's going to stick with SMU over Ole Miss. When you look at Florida, Okay, how did the Gators sell where the program is? You've got DJ Lagway in there, 5-star quarterback. Could he be the savior for Billy Napier? Sure. But Billy Napier is also very much on the hot seat entering this year. But nonetheless, if you're Keelon Russell and you do flip to them, well, you could be looking for a new coach come December. That would make things interesting. It's the farthest school away for Keelon in terms of who's really in the mix. You know, Oregon is another one, but again, the Ducks want 2 quarterbacks, but would Keelon go all the way out there? And I know Rashad Samples is out there, but I just don't see him being a part of a 2-quarterback class. And then you get to the Alabama offer. And I'll share this. I think one thing that Keelon, when it comes to time to make a decision, his final decision, I should say, I think one thing he's going to weigh is if he has the opportunity to commit to an Alabama and Texas, is do I want to play, or how badly do I want to play in front of 100,000 people in the SEC? And I think it's a tough question because you go to a lot of those programs, and yes, and at SMU you're going to play eventually at a Florida State or a Clemson, and you're going to play at Louisville, and you're going to play some great venues. But 100,000 people in the SEC week in, week out is eye-catching for recruits. And so for Keelon, in particular with Alabama, with Texas, I think there's much deeper ties. He's in-state, it's flagship, all those things. But with Alabama, the staff just offered you. Obviously, they had success with Michael Penix at Washington. But how are you going to weigh going out of state all the way over there to a new era of Alabama football and weighing playing in front of that, that crowd for that storied program versus you've got relationships at SMU, you'd be a hometown hero, you could see, yourself being a starting quarterback at SMU pretty early on, quite frankly. And then on top of it, SMU hasn't played the NIL card yet. And I think they're going to play it, and they're going to play it heavily when it does come time for Keelon Russell to have those types of conversations. And I think it's going to have a pretty big impact on his recruitment in the end. When you're a top 100 prospect and you're top 10 quarterback, you're going to command a certain amount of NIL. And I think he's sitting in a position where he deserves it. And so there's context to all of these conversations around quarterbacks. And it doesn't mean that, SMU's only keeping him because Texas is, got a quarterback committed. Look, he's visited Texas multiple times. I think if he really dialed them up and said, hey, I want to be a part of Texas, want to commit, I think they would take his commitment. I really do. Yeah, and look, maybe that happens. Maybe he does want to be a part of a 2-quarterback class. But don't count out SMU here, because he's got some people in his corner that are very much about him staying home in Dallas. They see a path where eventually Kevin Jennings is the guy to hand the torch to Keelon Russell, and potentially early enough in his career that that's appealing. And Rhett Lashley and his staff have shown that if you're good enough, we'll play you. And I think that's the case this fall with Kevin Jennings and Preston Stone. If Kevin comes into fall camp and absolutely balls out neck and neck with Preston, maybe there is a change made. But there's all these different things with Keelon's recruitment and quarterback dominoes around the country that, while SMU has done a very good job and continues to do a very, very good job recruiting Keelon Russell, it might not work out, but it doesn't mean that, all would be lost. They can go out and use that money to acquire great players through the transfer portal. They can go out and flip a 2025 commit. SMU's been quietly keeping in touch with other guys in the 2025 class, and they've not extended an offer. We've not seen that happen because it hasn't been necessary. But look, they've hung on. From all the coverage, I would have thought Keelon Russell would have decommitted 2 months ago, but he hasn't. He's been back for the spring game. He's going to be back for his official visit. The staff's going to try to buckle down and make this a place that he has to really say no to. And the fact that he's committed is a big deal, I think. he was uncommitted, I think it'd be a little bit more open, be a harder sell. But I think the fact that he's committed and he's got some teammates, he's got some close friends, he's got some people in SMU's corner. Don't count out the Mustangs, and we'll continue to track it. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. We will go in depth later this week on SMU recruiting on our subscribers only podcast. So be sure to tune into that. We'll kind of tee up the start of May and where things stand in the high school recruiting ranks. And of course, we'll be there to cover all the transfer news every step of the way. So subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com using code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1. And for just $1, you get 2 months of your coverage on the Mustangs entering a critical period of time. So hope you guys enjoyed the pod. Hit the subscribe button wherever you catch your podcast at, and we will catch you guys next time on the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on3 and on Instagram at on3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.